Hi and welcome to another GC Mysteries video, where this time we are looking at the killings of Israel Keyes. Israel Keyes, he was born on the 7th of January 1978, and he was an American serial killer, rapist, arsonist, burglar and bank robber. He admitted to his violent crimes it started as early as 1996. Now, he wasn't apprehended until the 13th of March 2012, and the most chilling thing about Israel Keyes was the interrogation tapes, which I have watched, and he's laughing, he's not bothered. He knew that he killed all these people, he'd hurt all these people. He just didn't give a flying, I can't say the word, but if you're imaginative you'll know what I was going to say. But he just really didn't care, and that's what really got me wanting to do a video about him. Now, he was born in Cove in Utah to a large Mormon family, which converted from the faith when he was between the ages of 3 and 5, and turned instead to a radical form of fundamentalist Christianity that he himself later described as militia-like and Amish. Now, if you don't know what Amish means, it's basically the Amish are a group of traditionalist Christian church fellowships with Swiss, German and Alsatian Anabaptist origins, and they just took Christianity to a whole new level. Now, he was the second of 10 children born to Heidi Keyes, née Hankanson, and John Jeffrey Keyes. Now, Israel and his siblings were homeschooled. Now, at the same time that they deconverted from Mormonism, the Keyes family moved to an area near Colville in Washington, where they lived in a one-room cabin without electricity or running water. Now, in Colville, the family attended services at 2 churches, the Ark and the Christian Israel Covenant Church, which practiced white supremacist Christian identity ideology and befriending the neighbouring family of white supremacist and convicted murderer Chevy Keough. Now, you'd think that might have something to do with why Israel Keyes became so evil, so unattached from what he had done, so not bothered, so he just didn't see it as a crime. And even in the interrogation tapes, he says he did things that he thought was normal and seemed okay, and he laughed and said other people didn't seem to think it was okay, and he laughed at that. You don't, right? But so he was a friend of the neighbouring family of white supremacist and convicted murderer Chevy Keough. Now, Keyes renounced the Christian faith by his teenage years and eventually became interested in Satanism. Now, as I said, you'd think that by him actually knowing a convicted murderer, that might have started Israel down the path of doing the same kind of stuff that Chevy Keogh had done, and it had started with animals, and then it had gone to whatever, and then it had, and it had just transitioned until it was humans. Okay. But it wasn't Chevy Keogh. Now, Chevy Keogh obviously is a convicted murderer. He's as bad as Israel Keyes, but it wasn't Chevy Keogh that set Israel Keyes off. Now, Keyes is known to have lived in the Makah reservation community of Near Bay, Washington, on the Olympic Peninsula. Now, I was shocked to learn that Israel Keyes had actually served in the United States Army, and he was a specialist rank in the 5th Infantry Regiment and the 25th Infantry Division. Now, he served in the US Army from 1998 to 2001 at Fort Lewis, Fort Hood, and in Egypt. While at Fort Lewis, he served on the mortar team in the 1st Battalion, the 5th Infantry, the 25th Infantry Division, and former Army friends of Keyes have noted his quiet demeanour and habit of keeping to himself. Although on weekends he was reported to drink heavily, consuming entire bottles of his favourite drink, which was Wild Turkey Bourbon, which is a brand of Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, and he was also a fan of the hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse. Now, often abbreviated as the ICP, it's an American hip-hop duo composed of Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, founded in Detroit in 1989. Now, he had displayed posters of the musical acts in the barracks, and in 2007 Keyes started a construction business in Alaska. Now, Keyes Construction, working as a handyman, a contractor, and a construction worker, according to all accounts, he had a good business. He had plenty of custom. He had people that would leave their keys to their houses with him so that he could go in while they were at work or shopping, and he could do the work that he was carrying out, and nobody had a problem with this. Okay? But you see, the one thing about Israel and his siblings, obviously the rest of his siblings didn't become serial killers and rapists, but But Israel and his siblings were homeschooled, and they also lived in the one-room cabin without electricity or running water. So he never really was sociable. He never really had a way to be sociable. He didn't have television. He didn't have the basic things that we now have. You know, televisions, mobile phones or cell phones if you're in the US, tablets, laptops, computers, stuff like that. They are basic things to us now. But to them, to Israel and his siblings, that wasn't something that they had access to at all. So I'm not saying that's an excuse. That's not an excuse at all. There is no excuse for killing anybody. Full stop. But the thing is, when it came to his victims, Keyes admitted to investigators that he killed 4 people in Washington. Claims that they were the subject of an active investigation by the state police and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI. He did not have a felony criminal record in Washington, although he had been cited in Thurston County for driving without a valid license, and in an earlier incident pleaded guilty to driving under the influence, or a DUI as US police would call that. Probably called it back then as well, but that's its full name. Authorities were reviewing unsolved murder and missing persons cases to determine which, if any, may be linked to Keyes. Now, Keyes did murder to at least 4 murders, but he was teasing the FBI. And when I say teasing, he wanted a special brand of cigar. He wanted a coffee from Starbucks, right? And because the FBI wanted to get through this case and get what they needed, he was getting what he was asking for, and so this carried on. But he confessed to at least 1 murder in New York State. In late 2012, authorities had not determined the identity, age or gender of the victim, or when and where the murder may have occurred, but regarded the confession as credible. That was because Keyes had ties to New York. He in fact owned 10 acres and a dilapidated cabin in the town of Constable. He also confessed to committing bank robberies in New York and Texas. The FBI later confirmed that Keyes robbed the community bank in Tupper Lake, New York, in April 2009. So what he was telling the police and the FBI and the police were going back to their records, and they were confirming that this happened. So basically they knew that he weren't bullshitting. And I'm sorry for swearing, I don't normally swear, but that's basically what they were doing. He also told authorities that he burglarized a Texas home and set it on fire. Authorities claim Keyes may have killed a woman in New Jersey and buried her near Tupper Lake, New York. Now, he also admitted to killing Bill and Lorraine Currier of Essex, Vermont. Keyes broke into the Curriers' home on the night of June 8th, 2011 and tied them both up before driving them to an abandoned farmhouse where he shot Bill before sexually assaulting and strangling Lorraine. Their bodies have never been found because 2 years 2 years prior to the Currier's death, Keyes hid a murder kit which he later used to kill them near their home. But the reason why their bodies were never found was because the farmhouse in which he committed the murders was demolished and taken to a landfill. And the FBI and the police did very, very extensive and very long searches of that landfill, but unfortunately were unable to find the remains. Now, Keyes' last known victim was 18-year-old Samantha Koenig. Now, she was a coffee booth employee in Anchorage, Alaska. Now, he kidnapped her from her workplace on February 12, 2012. He took her debit card and other property off her, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her the following day. He left her body in a shed and went to New Orleans, where he departed on a pre-booked 2-week cruise with his family. The thing is about this man, he actually had a daughter. He had a daughter, but he still did that to someone else's daughter. So that was in the Gulf of Mexico, and then when he returned to Alaska, he removed Samantha's body from the shed, applied makeup to the corpse's face, sewed her eyes open with fishing line, and snapped a picture of a 4-day-old issue of the Anchorage Daily News alongside her body, posed to appear that she was still alive after demanding $30,000 in ransom. But it gets worse. Keyes dismembered Samantha's body and disposed of it in Matanuska Lake, north of Anchorage. I apologise if I've pronounced that wrong. I don't mean to, but I apologise if I have. Now, an FBI report stated that Keyes all in all burglarized between 20 to 30 homes across the US and robbed several banks between 2001 and 2012. He may be linked to as many as 11 deaths in the United States and potentially even more victims outside the country. Now, after Samantha's murder and after Keyes demanded ransom money and police were able to track the withdrawals from the account as he moved throughout the southwestern US, during that time, in a controversial move, the police refused to release surveillance footage of Samantha's abduction. Now, Keyes was actually arrested by Texas Highway Patrol, Corporal Brian Henry, and Texas Ranger Stephen Rayburn in the parking lot of the Cotton Patch Cafe in Lufkin, Texas, on the morning of March 13th, 2012, after he had again used Samantha's debit card, which had been traced through New Mexico and Arizona. Now, he was subsequently extradited to Alaska, where he confessed to the murder. He was represented by the Alaska federal defender Rich Kurtner, and he was indicted in the case, and his trial was scheduled to begin in March 2013. Now, on Wednesday, May 23rd, 2012, Keyes attempted to escape during a routine hearing. Now, Keyes broke his leg irons and jumped over the railing, but a taser gun was used in efforts to quickly subdue him, and it did. But subsequently, while being held in jail at the Anchorage Correctional Complex on suspicion of murder, Keyes committed suicide on December the 2nd, 2012, via self-inflicted wrist cuts and strangulation. A suicide note, a bloody suicide note at that, was found under his body, which consisted of an ode to murder but offered no clues about other possible victims. Now, although the video isn't in this video, the note is, I might add that, but in 2012 the FBI released the drawings of 11 skulls and one pentagram which had been drawn in blood and found underneath Keyes' jail cell bed after his death. The FBI believe this correlates with what are believed to be the total number of his victims. Now, the reason why he started this spree was that he admired Ted Bundy, and they shared many similarities, but there were differences, and one of those differences was time. Ted Bundy didn't really have to worry about CCTV or credit or debit card checking, tracking, tracing and tracing transactions. So, that's what he did. But honestly, if you want to learn more, just search Israel Keyes, and you should find plenty about him. But honestly, and I think it was Samantha's mum that said it, he didn't see his day in court and they didn't get justice, but he's better dead. Thank you for watching this GC Mysteries video. If you liked it, please like, subscribe and click the notification bell. If you can, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/GC Mysteries. See us on Facebook and Twitter, GC Mysteries, and bye bye for now.